In a span of just one weekend, NASCAR crowns not one, but 3 champions. Champions of its 3 premier national series. Drivers and teams who have turned adversity into gold, showed passion when it mattered most, and when challenged, answered the call. After 25,000 miles of racing, the moment of truth has arrived.
This just isn't any other race. This is the championship race, and there's a lot that comes with that. So I'm very optimistic. I think that we'll have a very fast race car, and we'll go out onto the racetrack and do all that we can each and every lap.
For us, it's about focusing on getting the job done and trying not to think about all those other things, whether it's what it means or what obstacles lie ahead. It's about just focusing on what we need to do.
Good evening and welcome into this Speed Special as we get you ready for championship weekend at the Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm Adam Alexander. Jeff Hammond will join me tonight as well. And we have got a full crew at the track standing by to bring you everything you need to know about this weekend. You know, it's been a long year for NASCAR teams, and now only one race remains. 2 drivers still in contention for the 2012 Sprint Cup title. Jimmie Johnson, the 5-time champion, trying to come from behind and take down the young but brash Brad Keselowski. Who will it be, and how did we get here? Now a look back at events 1 through 9 in NASCAR's version of the playoffs.
Race 1 of the chase, and again, it's like starting the season all over again.
All right, Brad, just started a new 10-race series for us here. You've done it well the last 12. Let's do it again.
10-4, boss. Let's get it done. This is the weekend we've been waiting for all year long. All right, boys, heads down. Let's roll.
Out front it is still Jimmie Johnson, but not able to break away from Brad Keselowski.
Well, it wouldn't be a weekend for me at the racetrack if there wasn't a little bit of drama involved in a win.
This time.
Here's the dominant car, the leader, Jimmie Johnson, coming to pit road.
Leaders out pit road, Paul. Bring it to us this time.
Be ready? Go like hell. Hard.
He's getting a 4-tire stop the crew. Already working on the left side of the machine.
Look at Brad Keselowski and Jimmie Johnson as they come back onto the racetrack.
You're moving.
Come crunch time, Keselowski looked the 5-time champion in the eye, and he did not blink.
It's Keselowski getting the jump in the chase for 2012.
Yeah, great job, everybody.
Jimmie Johnson at 80%. Here comes Brad Keselowski, a full head of steam. Brad Keselowski is the man who moves into the lead.
Well, as the last 2 laps played out, I knew the 24 was the only guy that was in position to challenge us. I was going to run that thing out of gas before I was going to let him by.
Trying to score the upset here at the Monster Mile. Today he will win and make another huge statement about his intent in this year's championship run.
Hell yeah! Great job, guys!
Jimmie Johnson breaks loose.
I don't give a how many people over the wall. Get to work on it. Just tape like hell, guys. Everybody else tape like hell. Ron, you get that aluminum on there. Looks good, man. Go like hell. Well, he said the 48-car wreck. He looks fine right there.
They've been working on it for 5 or 6 times now.
Ron Malik, good job fixing that race car up with all those guys.
Kyle Busch breaks loose again in turn 4.
Holy I can't believe I saved it. Unbelievable. We win the championship. Just go ahead and save that part right there, that video clip.
Johnson looking inside. The ball listening. The nudge.
New leader, 48.
5 laps left to run. Who's it going to be to victory lane?
Johnson gets away to the lead.
Yeah, baby, I need 1 good lap. Take that bottom.
One more time for Jimmie Johnson.
Jimmie Johnson goes back into the lead of the championship point standings.
Yes, boys. Yes. Right here, brother.
They don't need the seats anymore. The green flag is waving with 8 laps to go. Jimmie Johnson powers on the outside. Here comes Keselowski diving back to the inside.
We're here to lose this damn championship.
2 laps to go. Jimmie Johnson leads them all before, heading for home in Texas. Jimmie Johnson trying to be a 6-shooter in the Sprint Cup Championship. Grabs his 5th win of 2012.
2 more of these victories we got to get. We got a big one waiting for us.
Trouble off of turn 4. It's Jimmie Johnson. He slapped the wall on the front straightaway.
Right front blue and under the wall. Reminder to let you know who's sitting in the garage right now. This big picture, please.
Jimmie Johnson having problems falling way back. Brad finishes in the 6th position, avoids several bullets, and goes into the championship point lead by 20.
You heard it there. Brad Keselowski, a 20-point advantage going to the season finale. And for him, the numbers on Sunday are simple. Finish inside the top 15, and he will win the 2012 Sprint Cup Series Championship. Happy to welcome in Jeff Hammond to the program tonight. 9 weeks ago, Jeff, you predicted, like so many, that Jimmy Johnson would win the championship in 2012. But the bottom line, Brad Keselowski has had other plans.
Yeah, you had to remind me of that, didn't you? But no, I really felt like it was going to wind up being a Jimmy Johnson, Denny Hamlin show. But for some reason, Brad Keselowski said, guys, don't forget about me. He got him some early wins. He's been like that old tick. He's kind of latched on, and he will not turn loose, and he eats, and every week he just gets bigger and bigger. It's incredible what this young man has done.
2 wins in the playoffs and the model of consistency. 9 races, 8 times he's finished inside the top 10. Now more reaction from the track. Let's go to John Roberts, Darrell Waltrip, and Kyle Petty.
Adam, this season started 9 months ago, just a couple hundred miles up the road here in Daytona. Now, after a wild trip around the country, we are back to settle it in Florida once again. And now that we have 1 race to go, we have 2 championship contenders separated by 20 points. Alongside of Darrell Waltrip and KP, guys, we're looking at a 2-man race essentially right now. But when you go back a couple weeks ago to Texas, that was when we really saw these 2 drivers separate themselves.
Yeah, I've said this forever, and I think Kyle will agree. It's always come down to 2 men. I mean, you know, we start a chase, we start a championship season, everybody say, oh, everybody, this is going to be the best one yet. It's always 2 guys. Yeah. And right now we know who those 2 guys are. And you know what? I tell you something about these 2 guys. I don't think they like each other.
Well, after the Texas finish.
I don't think there's any real admiration or respect between these 2 guys.
That's the deal. I don't think there's a lot of respect between them. And I don't think this is that maybe necessarily that they don't like each other. They travel in such different circles, but they don't respect. You've got one that's an old guard guy. I call Jimmy an old guard at 36, 37. And then you've got Brad, who's come up the hard way, come up through his family business, and come up that way. 2 different ways they got here. They take 2 different approaches to how they race. And when you look at it, it's 2 totally different philosophies that are at the top of this heat.
And Darrell, what did you think about that battle between the 2 of them? Of course, Brad caught some heat after Texas for the way he drove Jimmy, and he didn't like it, obviously, as he told us. But what did you think of that battle?
Well, after the Phoenix interview, you know, when he went off about how he felt about it, obviously it weighed on his mind. But this kid has got an ability that reminds me of some old school racers.
Yes.
He has an ability to let things roll off his back. He doesn't seem to be offended. He'll come back at you. You can't knock him down and expect him to stay down. He gets back up.
And Kyle, you got to think, after you saw Jimmy Johnson hit the wall in Phoenix, that tells us now that this is Brad Keselowski's championship. I know Jimmy's not giving up without a fight, but that was a big sign.
Huge sign. I think there's been, in these last 4 races, I thought Jimmy going to Martinsville, sitting on the pole, winning a race, going to Texas, sitting on the pole, winning a race. But then for him to come there to Phoenix and never get on track. They never got on track from the time practice started on Friday. They were never on their game plan, cut a tire or melted a bead, whatever happened to them, and they end up in the wall, and it's a 27-point swing. 2 weeks, it's a 14-point swing for the positive for him, and in 1 week it goes back 27.
You know what was important about that? Jimmy didn't have as many wins as Brad.
Yeah.
And so they knew that. If it came down to a tiebreaker, they'd lose, just like Carl did last year. So they went to work and got them a couple of wins. Now they have the same amount of wins. And if it did come down to a tiebreaker, who would win?
Yeah, good point. Jimmy wins.
Jimmy wins.
Now, even though that was one of the big headlines, of course, the biggest headline out of that race was the battle between Jeff Gordon and Clint Boyer.
That wasn't a battle.
That wasn't a
one-sided
battle. What did you think, Darrell?
You know,
what did you think, Darrell?
I tell you the truth, I can't quite get my arms around or wrap my brain around why Clint Boyer even put himself in a position for Jeff Gordon to wreck him. Everybody knew Jeff Gordon was waiting on him. The spotter knew it. Yeah. Michael knew it. Everybody knew he was waiting on him. So I would have figured out a way to get by him without putting myself in harm's way. That would have been the first thing I'd done, but I was disappointed in Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, I was disappointed in Jeff, and I've said it all week, and I've got hate on Twitter and hate everywhere else. We hold Jeff to a higher standard.
Exactly.
That's why we're disappointed in him. It's not that it's killed his career or done anything. I think what Jeff has meant to this sport and what Jeff has done for this sport, I think we inside the sport hold him to a higher standard, and I did not like what he did at all.
When your heroes let you down, that's as big of a disappointment as you can have. And some people, he let them down.
Yeah, so there was a lot going on at Phoenix and after Phoenix, but Jeff Hammond, we still have a lot going on this week at Homestead Miami Speedway.
JR, yes, we do. And the thing is, Mr. Keselowski always says, I don't believe in racing record books, but we got to take a quick look at what these 2 guys have done when it comes to Homestead. Jimmy Johnson, 11 times. He's raced there, 7 top 10s. Brad 4 times, no top 10s. The key to all of this is that 15th position. You have got to get it done. Right now, Jimmy Johnson needs to win on Sunday, put all the pressure back on Brad, and Brad needs to rise to the occasion to get his first top 10. Adam, if he wants to wind up walking away with the championship, if the numbers are that simple.
And, Jeff, we're going to talk a lot about Jimmy and Brad tonight, but we all know this weekend at Homestead, more than just about those going for the Sprint Cup. The Camping World Truck Series, the tightest of all the battles in Miami. 12 points separating the top 3 drivers. A preview on the way. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. going for his 2nd straight in Nationwide, and Homestead is one of his best tracks. We look at the numbers later. Plus, we go back to championship press conferences. They happened earlier today. Let the head games begin. Brad and Jimmy at the podium next. There is the scene. South Beach getting ready to host NASCAR's best. The trophy's going to be given away just around the corner.
Each year that I won the championship has come under different circumstances, and you got to be determined and willing to work. Work for a championship. It's not an easy thing to do, and everybody in this garage area is willing to work. So it's tough to raise your game each time you go out.
Jimmy Johnson has never won a race trophy at the Homestead Miami Speedway. However, 5 times the California kid has taken home the big prize from the Sunshine State. If he makes it 6 championships in 7 years on Sunday, he will earn it big time. He trails Brad Keselowski by 20 points heading to Sunday's race. Both appear ready for the challenge ahead.
Get to the end of the race, and they're not having the day that that they would hope to have. That information could. It's really probably not going to change anything that I do. I mean, I still need every spot I can get on the track, but I'm sure information will come in, and even if it isn't specific, I will be able to tell by the tone in Chad's voice as to if we're in the good or the bad.
If you go out there and run well, at least from my position, that it all takes care of itself. So with maybe the exception of the last lap or 2, I got a pretty good idea where I'm at on the racetrack, where I should. And that stuff works its way out if we're in a good position.
Of course, I'm going to find points that give myself motivation and my team. And if there's anything I can do, and Brad, if you'd like me to call you later and remind you of any other examples, I certainly can, of guys that didn't pull off the season finale as they would hope. But one thing I've learned is that regardless of how experienced anyone is in this championship battle, at some point, the magnitude of it hits you. And at some point, he may be very comfortable and calm now. It may not happen until he's in the car, but at some point, that magnitude hits.
I can tell you that the group that I have and that I'm surrounded by, whether it's in my personal life or professional life, they're not known for being very rattled in these opportunities and these positions. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that you can do, is be surrounded by people that share that same passion that you have, but also put out a level of calmness that is somewhat addictive.
So Brad Keselowski has to finish 15th on Sunday if he's going to clinch the title. Sounds easy, right? Jimmy Johnson says that's no layup when there's a championship on the line. They're already playing mind games. Now let's go back to the track. Here's Matt Clark with Bob Dillman.
Adam will call Brad Keselowski big lead Brad this week because he's got 20 points. Matt Clark and I here at Homestead Miami Speedway. Very excited to be here. But think about this. Jimmy Johnson has to overcome a lot this week to try to go after this title. 20 points the margin between he and Brad Keselowski to go after that 6th title. So Matt Clark, the big question is, can Jimmy Johnson indeed get the job done here this weekend?
Well, I think he can. However, let's just face it, he said it. He does not control his own destiny. He has to worry that something happens to Brad, but the 48 is going to show up, try to win every practice, try to win the pole, and put the pressure on Brad. That's what they have to do. They're loaded with a couple good bullets. They've got their cars that ran 2nd at Chicago, 4th at Dover, another car that won Texas on the rig that'll unload today. So they are loaded for bear. They're going to put the pressure on Brad, Bob.
And I think the key thing is here for Jimmy Johnson, he started playing those head games today in the press conference, applying applying the pressure to Brad Keselowski. He mentioned the IndyCar championship and that things went awry for the point leader who happened to be racing for Penske Racing going into that finale.
The table a little bit for Brad.
Exactly.
And you know what else he did at the presser, Bob? He also, when they sat them down before they came up on the stage, he and Brad were just one chair apart. He engaged Buescher, never talked to Brad. You think that's by chance? He's no way going to say, Brad, hey, you know, things. It's war. So Brad shut out, talked to James Buescher, gave him the cold shoulder, setting the tone for the weekend, Bob.
I got a chance to talk to Brad Keselowski today, and it was Brad Keselowski just like normal. Very confident, laughing, joking around with people. But I asked Brad, and he was asked in the press conference, okay, you don't seem like you're taking any of the pressure. He goes, I'm not. And somebody asked him, are you dumb? You know what's on the line here? The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series Championship. And he said, you know what? I'm just trying to take it one moment at a time, and I'm having a good time at that. But Jimmy Johnson, I think, pointed out something very important. He said at some point during this weekend, he is going to wake up and realize this is it. The game is on the line.
That's right.
And I think the teams are also going to feel that this weekend.
Well, without a doubt, when you wake up Sunday morning, you realize today I can be a Sprint Cup champion for the 6th time or for the first time. And there's a lot of guys that want that first championship on both teams. So it should be an exciting championship weekend, Bob.
The entire two bunch, they have a little savvy. They like to crank up that rap music in the garage area.
That's
Matt
good.
Clark, Bob Dillner are going to have a great time down here this weekend in Homestead Miami Speedway. Adam?
And, Bob, we all know if you're going to be successful in the Sprint Cup Series these days, you must be able to perform at mile-and-a-half tracks. The Homestead Miami Speedway, one of those. Here are the numbers for Brad and Jimmy. They each have won. In fact, Jimmy is the all-time leader at these kinds of facilities. Both have had bad finishes, but look at the average finish. Jimmy, 7.3. Brad, an even 11. And they'll go toe-to-toe again on Sunday. We are just getting started with our NASCAR Championship Week special. 3 drivers have their eye on the big prize in the Truck Series. We hear from them on the eve of their season finale. And next, it's back to the track. They call him Bad Brad. So how does he make good on Sunday? Darrell Waltrip shares his thoughts straight ahead.
And Keselowski will go to victory lane in Talladega. Brad Keselowski will not win here tonight.
Chase win #1 to Brad Keselowski.
Keselowski wins it total.
Great job, guys. Hell yeah. We win the championship. Just go ahead and save that part right there, that video clip.
Welcome back once again, everyone, to our NASCAR Championship Week special, coming to you from Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm John Roberts, alongside of Darrell Waltrip and Kyle Petty. We have 2 drivers going for NASCAR's top prize, the Sprint Cup Trophy. One of those drivers we know well is a 5-time champion, but what about Brad Keselowski? Kyle, where did he come from, and what set the tone for the kind of driver he is?
Well, I think what set the tone, and Darrell can speak to it probably a little bit better, is his uncle and his father, Ron and Bob Keselowski. I think, you know, growing up and those guys dragging that car to the racetrack, fighting against Junior and the King and those guys, they were always in that underdog position. Always. He came along, he run ARCA, he got a break in a truck. Brad was still in that underdog position. And when he finally went to Junior, he had to work through that in his head to get past that underdog. Now he's that guy that's climbed the ladder, and he's got so much heart. I just think this kid's got so much heart no matter what happens. But I think it starts with his uncle and his dad and his family, the Keselowski family.
Well, I think he got his confidence. He's a very confident young man. We see that in his interviews. But I think he got that when Junior tagged him to drive his car. When Dale Jr. and Kelly put him in that Nationwide car. I think that really upped his confidence, and it took him to another level. And winning that championship, I think that took him to another level. But one thing I don't know if a lot of people know or not, with Dale Jr., Kelly is his kind of go-to gal, if you will, his sister Kelly. And with Brad, his sister is who his mentor is. She does a lot of behind-the-scenes work for him, does a lot of stuff, and he bounces a lot of things off of her. So I think they have a lot in, Dale Jr. and him have a lot in common when it comes to who they are. But that whole crowd, Paul Wolf, that whole crowd, they're the I wouldn't do it that way crowd. They always are doing.
But they're going to do it that way.
You know, they do a pit stop and say, "I wouldn't have done that," but they make it work.
Yeah, now we're in a really good situation for the sport right now. If Jimmy Johnson wins a championship, he's a 6-time winner. That's an incredible feat. If Brad Keselowski wins, we got that new fresh face. But no matter who it is, at the end of this thing, Jimmy Johnson said after the last race, and I'm sure the 48 team is approaching this, Darrell, they're not going to give up.
Well, I know, but if you look at Jimmy, if you listen to Jimmy's interview, he talked about, for the first time in a long time, next year. you know, well, if things don't work out this year, finally, almost a little concession.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. So I think Jimmy knows that 20 points and the way that Dodge has been running. And by the way, I don't think they've had an engine failure all year long.
I wasn't going to bring that up. That's okay. Don't bring it up.
Oh,
now.
don't bring it up?
I don't think they have either.
I don't think they have.
They have not, so that's...
So they haven't had any failures.
But as always, you know, when we look at this, anything can and will happen on a racetrack. If Jimmy Johnson could lose 27 points in one race, Brad could lose it back.
Exactly.
Yeah, have the same thing. It could be a flat tire.
Anything. There's a lot of working parts on a car. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we hear. But there's also a lot of working parts
in your head.
People's minds. When you look at a guy who's running for his first championship as opposed to a guy who has been there 5 times, is there a mental advantage?
No, and hold on. Let me say this. Brad's won a championship in the Nationwide to be able to win one in the Cup. Jimmy never won anything in Nationwide. Jimmy just came in and started winning Cup championships. So I think that's a moot point. I think when you look at that, there's not any difference. Brad's got it upstairs.
Yeah, and not only that, this kid is smart. He knows his equipment. Yes. He can build engines. He can build cars.
Yeah.
He grew up in the garage with his dad, 2-car garage. So he knows his car. I think that's a bit of an advantage, too. I think that's why sometimes his car seems to really handle well, maybe sometime better than even Jimmy's does. So he's a smart kid. He's chassis savvy, and he is determined, and he's going to make a great champion if he pulls it off.
Yeah, and Adam, you know, it was 4 years ago that he sat across the desk from Roger Penske and talked him into believing in this young driver by saying, we can win a championship. And if he pulls it off, it's going to be one heck of a feat and a great thing for Penske Racing.
Yeah, JR, I think it's safe to say that it's all worked out when you look at the Penske organization. Jeff is back with us now. Kyle called Keselowski an underdog. I think that's a good way to describe him. We know him as Bad Brad, but if Bad Brad is to win the championship, is it good for NASCAR?
I think it is. I mean, I can't see anything wrong about it because I think he's got a great young following right now. Everybody loves him as far as Twitter's concerned. Darrell touched on it. He's a smart race car driver. He's got the right kind of swagger, the right kind of attitude. I mean, Adam, if I had to look at him and kind of quantify who he really is, he's a rebel with a cause. And I really believe because of the fact, the love of the sport that he got from his family, he'd really be an outstanding champion for NASCAR.
Rebel with a cause.
Rebel with a cause.
That's his phrase. Coming up on our NASCAR Championship Week special. After last week's problems, Jimmy Johnson needs some help if he's going to win his 6th title. However, history says it can happen. A look back at some of the great comebacks of all time straight ahead. But first, we reflect back on the highs and lows of a wild season in the Camping World Truck Series. Good to have you with us for our Championship Week special on Speed.
Can't have mistakes. You got to cut those mistakes because that closes up the field as soon as you do that. And with 2 to go, you just got to fight and do what you do every weekend, and that's to get to the front somehow and make it happen. Can't give up till the end.
There's Austin Dillon, the man that won the title a year ago in the Truck Series. You know, it's been a record-setting year for the Tailgaters. 15 different winners going into tomorrow night's finale. 9 of those getting to victory lane for the first time in their career. With 12 points separating the top 3 with 1 race to go, you kind of get the feel anything can happen.
Well, in 2012, the one who has been dominant on mile and a half is the 31 of Buscher. And Buscher has issues. Your point leader into the wall.
We'll go to Homestead. I guess we're still leading the points.
It's going to be a big win for Timothy Peters at Bristol.
I just thank the good Lord for being with me and letting me win 2 in 1 year.
Joey Colt has been able to get around Timothy Peters for the 3rd spot.
And now we have a shot going into Homestead, and that's all we ask for.
He's going to grab his first ever Camping World Truck Series win.
I finally did it. I won a NASCAR race, and to finally do it means so much.
Around goes Brendan Gaughan. Ty Dillon also involved in this.
My guys are tough, and we're not giving up.
I wonder how this guy's sleeping tonight. James Buscher with a 7th place finish tomorrow evening in South Florida will clinch the 2012 Camping World Truck Series title. He and the others in contention met with the media earlier this afternoon.
We have to approach it the same way that the other guys do. They have a number as well. Theirs is just not as low of a number. It could have been a 20-point spread, but 2 to go, we blew a tire.
I look at it as all or nothing. We need to come in here and probably just like
The other two, they want to lead the most laps and win the race. So we got a lot of real estate that all three of us got to cover. So from my position, I like being the guy chasing James.
My number's 1. You know, we got to win the race, lead the most laps, and put the pressure on everybody else. And that's our main focus this weekend. And anything short of that's not going to be acceptable for us to win the championship, I don't think.
Why do we think this run to the title is going to be so good tomorrow night? Because the guy leading it, James Busher, 17th, his average finish at Homestead. The guys chasing him, Peters goes at 11.8. Ty Dillon, his average, a 6th-place finish. That only start coming 1 year ago. Now the guys that will call the action tomorrow night on Speed, Rick Allen, Phil Parsons, and Michael Waltrip.
Well, thank you, Adam. Joining me up here, we got Phil Parsons, Michael Waltrip, to talk about the Camping World Truck Series, because tomorrow night we will determine who the 2012 champion will be in the Camping World Truck Series. Now, it's a very tight battle. We have 3 drivers that are separated by just 12 points, and it has been a long road to get to this point. Take a look at some of the numbers for these 3 drivers.
You can see the big difference. You see 4 wins for Busher. That's what helped him have a 30-point bonus point year. And look at Timothy Peters, only 17 bonus points. Ty Dillon only 15 bonus points. James Busher has finished ahead of both of his competitors 10 times in the 21 races. Timothy Peters only 6 times. Ty Dillon only 5 times. So obviously, advantage Busher, right?
Well,
but it's not going to be quite that easy.
No, you know, he has a lot of speed, hence all the bonus points. But he needs to finish 7th or better tomorrow night. Sounds okay, right, with all that speed? A third of the races this year, he wasn't able to accomplish that. And in fact, in 4 previous starts here in Miami, his best finish is 12th. So James has got a lot of work for him to get done tomorrow night.
Well, the guy who has the most work to gain as far as if he wants to win this championship is Ty Dillon. And he's had some troubles already this year, Phil.
Very recently, too. Martinsville, you see he cuts a tire down, melts the bead on a tire, gets into the outside wall. Poorest finish of the season for him. They had defect repairs. There's that melted bead on that truck. Here he goes into Phoenix. He gets caught up in an incident between our man Caroga and his teammate Brendan Gaughan. Another poor finish for Ty Dillon.
Now, we've kind of skipped over Timothy Peters. He didn't have troubles at Phoenix, but Busher certainly had troubles last week, Michael.
Yeah, Timothy, a solid 4th-place finish has put him right in the middle of this championship battle. But when James Busher was asked to step on his truck, need to speed the pace up, he blows a right front tire. The thing comes apart. He goes hard into the outside wall. And it's a tough break for James Busher. But, man, we've got a great championship battle because of one tire going down. And that's how pivotal anything can happen in one of these races.
We've already had an incredible year in the Camping World Truck Series. We've had the most different winners. We've had the most first-time winners. But how will, when this championship comes to play out tomorrow night, how will each of these competitors mentally take on this task in front of them?
I just love Ty Dillon's support system. The people that are around him, they're behind him, won this championship a year ago. This young man has raced at Miami one time. He came down here last year. He got a lap down, passed the leader, drove away from him, and finished in the 6th spot. He knows he can get the job done tomorrow night, and I bet you that Richard Childress Racing team has coached him all week long about the mental attitude that it takes to be champion.
And remember, he raced for a championship last year in the ARCA Racing Series and won that championship. So I think right now Ty Dillon is extremely prepared. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to racing for a championship, I've never come to the last race of the year racing for a championship, but I have come to the last race trying to be in the top 5 in points or the top 10 in points, and I know how much pressure I felt to do that, so I cannot imagine how much pressure. They can talk the talk, they can walk the walk, but when it comes down to it, they have to feel it.
I'll put the pressure on both of you. Who's the champion this year?
I like Ty Dillon, and that's crazy. He's got some points he's got to make up, but I've seen just too many inconsistencies with James Busher. Timothy Peters, maybe not the speed. I like Ty Dillon.
How about you, Phil? What do you think?
I've got to go with James Busher. He's got the same truck that he won 4 races on a mile and a half. Where are we? At a mile and a half. It's got to be James Busher. He's got the point lead coming in.
All right. They say he only has to finish 7th to win the championship. Well, that's a pretty difficult task to accomplish when you have the same competition week in and week out, Adam.
Thank you, Rick. Put on your work clothes because you're going at it tomorrow. Qualifying live on Speed at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then our race coverage, 7:30. Chris Devoda has the setup. You can only see it live on Speed. We got a lot more on this NASCAR Championship Week special, including a look back at the 2012 season of the Nationwide Series. That's where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is looking to hold off Elliott Sadler and Austin Dillon and claim his 2nd title in a row. Next, Jimmy Johnson is behind the 8-ball heading into Sunday's Cup race. We remind you why he's not out of it yet. Some of Cup's greatest comebacks of all time still to come.
slams to the outside. It's five-time champion Jimmy Johnson. Hendrick Motorsports 200th Sprint Cup victory. A fourth win in the Brickyard 400 to Jimmy Johnson. No trouble. Jimmy Johnson turned into the wall. Johnson getting away. Jimmy Johnson scores in Texas.
Jeff Hammond back with us now. You know, Jimmy Johnson has had an amazing career, but he's the guy doing the chasing this weekend as Brad Keselowski leads the championship. And in the media center earlier today, five-time had some advice for BK.
To think that a top 15 finish is a layup is tough. I mean, this garage area is tough. You know, the weight of this race, I don't care who you are, it'll show up at some point in time. So, you know, I have a little bit of stock in that, and we'll see how they respond. I mean, their trends this year have been strong, but this is a different race.
So Jimmy not making it easy on Brad Keselowski, and it won't be easy for Brad on Sunday, but Jimmy's got an uphill climb as well if he's going to get it done.
He does, but at the same time, he's been through these situations. He has an understanding of what it's going to take. And the other thing about Jimmy Johnson is he can put the pressure on Brad Keselowski starting tomorrow with practice. Go out and win practice, go out and win the pole. The pressure's on Brad.
No question about it, and he knows how to get it done. And if he is able to come back and win his 6th championship, it wouldn't be the first time we had seen a great come-from-behind victory. Go back to last year. Tony Stewart trailed Carl Edwards heading into Homestead. Tony not only passed Carl for the title, he did it in style, taking the win and the championship by way of the tiebreaker. Now, in 2010, the aforementioned Jimmy Johnson overcame Denny Hamlin for his only comeback victory in the chase. Denny had a 15-point lead, but spun early, leading to a 14th place finish. Jimmy finished second, claiming his 5th straight title. Alan Kulwicki's 1992 comeback might be the best in Cup history. Kulwicki trailed Bill Elliott and Davey Allison by some 278 points with only 6 races remaining. At Atlanta, down 30 points, Kulwicki led the most laps and finished second to Bill Elliott, taking the title by 10. A race so close that if Elliott had led the most laps, Awesome Bill would have been the champion. In 1979, Richard Petty trailed Darrell Waltrip by 229 points with 11 to go. The King won multiple times in the final 11 events, taking the championship lead after the final race in Ontario, California. At the time, the closest championship battle in NASCAR's history. I know it's going to be difficult for Jimmy Johnson to make up 20 points on Brad Keselowski, who's been great. But if anybody can do it, you have confidence in a guy like Jimmy Johnson to get it done.
You got to have confidence in him, but at the same time, folks, we just got through showing the clips 4 times since 1979 that it's happened. So can it happen? Yes. Will it happen? We'll have to wait and see. But it's not. And I repeat, it will not be easy.
We should have given a warning to Brad Keselowski. If you're watching, turn the channel. You don't need to see the greatest comebacks in NASCAR history. When we come back, we set up Saturday's championship run for the Nationwide Series. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. trying to become only the 6th driver in series history to go back-to-back. Kenny Wallace and Kyle Petty tell us what Elliott Sadler and Austin Dillon need to do if they're going to spoil the party.
It takes a lot of hard work, for one, to become a champion. You got to have a great team, you got to have great equipment, great sponsors behind you to keep you out there each and every week, owners that are willing to put everything into it, and a driver that's going to be pushing as hard as they can. But you got to have good chemistry with your team, with your crew chief. It's a total team effort. You got to stay focused all year long.
In 2011, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. joined Greg Biffle and Carl Edwards as drivers who have won a Nationwide Series title for Jack Roush. In 2013, he will join them in the Sprint Cup Series. First, he would like to get another trophy for the Cat in the Hat. And he enters Saturday's race with 6 wins and a 20-point lead.
The 2012 season has brought a few competitors their first taste of victory.
And he is going to hold a winner's trophy at Daytona.
And moments that will be talked about for years to come.
Oh, in the corner. Hard, vicious crash. Hamlin sliding it sideways. Give it to Kurt. What a finish.
But the season has come down to 3 drivers, each one dealing with major setbacks.
For the championship leader, this is a bad situation.
Logano pushes Sadler around into the wall.
He is going to be black flagged for jumping the restart.
NASCAR just taking his championship right from me.
Whoa, in the 3-car, Austin Dillon has blown a right front tire. Look what this is going to do to the points. Austin's going to lose 2 spots.
and each understanding the power of never giving up.
He found a way to pull it together and refocus. His second win, both of them here at Kentucky. Ricky Stenhouse is going to win. He has a way to never give up. Awesome job.
Phoenix nearly ended Elliott Sadler's championship hopes.
Elliott Sadler into the wall.
But it gave Ricky Stenhouse a clear assignment.
16th or better next week for the number 6.
There's a time and place for everything. With one to go, the time is now.
Plenty of breathing room for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. as he tries to go back-to-back. You heard it in the piece. He finishes 16th on Saturday, and he will once again be the Nationwide Series champion. He and the other drivers competing for the title met with the media earlier today.
I think we've ran. You know, we're coming down to my favorite racetrack, so I can't think of a better place to finish it off.
Honestly, I think when you're inside the car, I've always been more focused on what we're doing. I mean, if something happens to Ricky, we're going to try to take advantage of it, but it's not like I'm riding around waiting for something to happen to him. We've got to go out and run our race and see where it takes us, because if we don't run our race and do our job, it doesn't matter if something happens bad to him or not anyway.
But I hope it gets nasty on Saturday, personally. I hope they door slam each other off of turn 4 and I make it through the smoke, but... No, I'm actually waiting for Elliott to give back Ricky what he owes him at Richmond and Bristol this year. I'm still trying to figure out when that's going to happen.
There is one good reason why you should bet on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for Saturday's championship. His average finish at Homestead, a third. Pretty solid as he tries to run down the trophy once again. Let's go back to the track now. Here's John Roberts hosting our coverage.
Adam, thank you. In the Nationwide Series, we have two championship contenders that are two very different drivers in age, style, and experience. That is Elliott Sadler and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But we have with us now Kenny Wallace, and no one has started more Nationwide Series races. No one than Kenny Wallace.
No one.
Kenny, let's look back at this season as a whole. How do we get to this point with these two drivers competing for this championship?
Well, simply, Ricky Stenhouse is the fastest race car driver in the Nationwide Series. Ricky Stenhouse leads in all category. He's got the most wins. He's tied with poles, but he's got the most top fives. Right now, the order, Kyle, is accurate. Stenhouse should be leading, but he wrecked a little bit too much early in the year. I believe he should have this championship locked up by now.
And both of those guys have had issues. If we go back to Elliott Sadler at Indianapolis, the issue he had that lost 17 points, we can go back to Ricky Stenhouse. I think he's the only guy at Montreal that Jacques Villeneuve didn't wreck. He wrecked himself and took himself when he had an opportunity to really gain some points. So those guys have made mistakes. So for even both of them, like Kenny says, the way it flushes out is right, but both of them have made a lot of mistakes.
And we do have a fairly similar situation to the Cup Series. We got one guy that's in the catbird seat, so to speak. We also got another guy who is not going to give up in Elliott Sadler. He knows it's going to be a long shot, but still, he's not going to stop battling.
Well, Elliott's a veteran. He's seen this movie before. All he's hoping is that he keeps his steady will, tries to win it all, get the pole, and then for Ricky Stenhouse to do what he did earlier this year, Kyle, which is wreck. I just don't think I see Ricky doing that.
Yeah. And, Kyle, we've seen it in races. We've seen it in championship battles. Number 1 and number 2 are going right at it, right? And that number 3 guy is lurking back there, and sometimes he can sneak through. Do you think Austin Dillon has a shot?
Mathematically, he's got a shot. Realistically, I don't think he's got a shot. I think Kenny said it in the very beginning. He's got the most top 10s. He's run really consistent, but he's not been fast enough to be that championship contender. He's not risen to that next level that Stenhouse and that Elliott Sadler has this year. So if it ends up happening, it ends up happening, but I don't think he's going to be able to make something happen.
Now, back to Stenhouse and Sadler. We pointed out the differences, but what about the similarities? These guys both come from very good teams, and they also are both moving on to different places next year. With Roush Fenway, they got a great Nationwide Series program. Ricky's going to move up to the Cup Series there, and we don't know exactly what Elliott's future holds for him, but he is moving on.
Well, look, they're both great race car drivers. The bottom line is this. Ricky Stenhouse is the future. He's very young. He's going to a big-time Cup ride. Is where Elliott says, look, I'm 35 years old. I want to get back to Cup. So exciting future for Ricky Stenhouse.
And also a pretty exciting future, too, if you look at some of the young drivers and some of the veteran drivers that are always in the Nationwide Series. That series has a lot of promise for next season.
Next year's going to be big, Kyle. We talked about, look, Regan Smith is coming back. I mean, we got Brian Vickers
coming back. There's a lot of good talent that's already been there and won championships and won races that's coming back, and then you throw in the guys that are already there.
I think what you're seeing with Nationwide Series, it costs too much money to run Cup. But these Cup guys are going to look, I'm going to go back and run Nationwide.
Yeah.
So it's going to be exciting in 2013.
Yeah, so Adam, this Nationwide Series has a very bright future, but first we have the job of crowning a champion here at the Homestead Miami Speedway. That will be decided this weekend, and whoever it is going to be one of the biggest nights of their life for sure.
If Brad Keselowski is able to close the deal on Sunday, it would be well-deserved when you consider the many hurdles his team has faced this year. Jeff and I talk about that and why Brad won't slow down on Sunday. Stick around right here on Speed.
Chase win #1, Chicagoland to Brad Keselowski. Brad Keselowski wins at Dover. Win and championship lead to Jimmy Johnson at Martinsville. It's got to be Keselowski finishing second behind his rival for the championship. Jimmy Johnson scores in Texas. Jimmy Johnson has hit the wall. What a moment in this championship.
They don't call him the captain for nothing. The resume for Roger Penske, amazing. 23 national championships, including 12 in IndyCar, a nationwide title, 3 in the American Le Mans Series, 165 IndyCar wins, including 15 in the 500. 73 times he's gone to victory lane in the Sprint Cup Series, 20 nationwide victories, and he also has a win in Formula One. The one thing he does not have, a Sprint Cup Series championship. Brad Keselowski, the driver that's going to try to get it done for the captain on Sunday. Brad's approach all along has been go get it, be aggressive. But a 20-point lead over Jimmy Johnson, should he play defense on Sunday?
I don't think so. I think you have to do what got you where you are. I mean, I really believe you can be a little bit cautious about it, but the thing is, you don't want to change your routine. You are so used to doing certain things. And this guy, he has a driving style like nobody else does. He understands what he wants to do. Last weekend, for example, when they told him to think big picture, I think he almost got himself in trouble trying to take care of that race car toward the end of the race after he knew Jimmy was in trouble. He needs to stay with the plan that got him there. He and Paul Wolfe have been so good at all the strategy and everything that they've done this year, they don't need to deviate.
I love his mentality. A reporter asked him about that in the media center today. Here's what Brad had to say.
One of my favorite movies in the whole wide world is this documentary on Ayrton Senna. And there's this really powerful scene in that movie that sticks with me when I think about this weekend. I think about this scene in the movie where they talk about him at Monaco and how he's had this huge lead over his teammate at the time. And they were coming down to the closing laps of the race. And they told him to slow down. You have a huge lead. Don't worry. Just slow down. And he wrecked. And I think of that as I approach this weekend. I'm going to go out there and play my game, race my way. That's got us to this point. And if we do that, we'll be fine.
You know who I think is going to be key for Brad on Sunday?
Who?
Paul Wolfe, the crew chief. Great balancing act between those two personalities.
Of course it is. And the thing is right now, if those two guys can wind up winning this championship, they'll be the first driver-crew chief combination to win both the Nationwide Series championship and a Sprint Cup championship. They work so well together. It's like listening to music when you get to working and communicating. So strategy, communication, and I still say there's another variable there. The captain himself. I think Roger Penske will have something also to say about this championship.
A lot of respect among all three of those guys. I hope Jeff has got his boarding pass printed, because in the morning, early, that's where he's going. South Florida. Championships on the line this weekend. And if you're a NASCAR fan, you need your shorts and your flowered shirt, because this weekend, all about the Homestead Miami Speedway in South Florida. 3 championships on the line, and if you want to watch the drama unfold, you can do it right here on Speed. For the trucks, qualifying begins 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday afternoon. Sprint Cup teams set the field for the season finale at 6, and then the first trophy going to be given away. It is the setup for the trucks, 7:30 tomorrow night, followed by Speed Center when we will interview the Truck Series champion. So you look, 3 different drivers going to have an opportunity to take home the hardware Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. When you look universally about winning a championship, what is one key this weekend that fits all 3 series?
I'm going to give you 2. One is not going to be the flowered shirt, but it will be qualifying for all 3 series. You qualify well, you put yourself in the best position to kind of like get it done. And that's what it all boils down to, getting it done, and begins with qualifying.
And you mentioned qualifying, and I immediately think about the Sprint Cup Series, Jimmy and Brad. Jimmy has been great on pole day. Brad, not so much. And where those guys qualify tomorrow live on Speed at 6 could go a long way in determining what their strategy is for Sunday.
I would agree with you, but one thing. Brad and Paul Wolf are used to playing from behind. So if they qualify deep in the field, there's nothing new about that. So let's don't take it too far or too extreme. I think this thing's a long ways from being over with, but I do like the fact if Jimmy Johnson qualifies on the pole, it does help put extra pressure on Brad.
Don't forget your suntan lotion, okay? I know how important it is to you.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Jeff's leaving for South Florida early in the morning. We're back here all weekend in the Speed Center for our entire crew down at the Homestead Miami Speedway. With Jeff Hammond, I'm Adam Alexander. Have a great night. We'll see you all weekend long, everybody.